Welcome, everybody, and in particular, my dearest friend Sharon, to our latest elemental conversation. And this time we will be talking about the water element because we are in the depths of winter, as my beautiful screen save will show behind me. I took this photo 3 or 4 days ago in the cold snap, and it sums up exquisitely the key sort of energetic qualities of the water element. But I'm so grateful that Sharon agreed to join me with a bit of arm twisting. No, not really, because no person with a very strong water element in their hierarchy of elements would ever have agreed to do this, because this is the worst thing that water energy wants to be, which is visible, stuck, pinned down, potential risk for complete and utter catastrophes at every turn. And you can just feel the anxiety, the watery fear build, and thinking, oh, don't make me do this. So I'm really, really grateful, Sharon, that you put yourself out on a limb, because that's what water does, to help me out. You're a very dear friend, and we will
You're
have fun.
you're very, very welcome, but you have just in that summary already described me straight away. I really do not like the video. I don't like having my photo taken.
No.
Yet I have been in so many video calls through my work life, particularly from COVID onwards. But it was I actually worked for a video conferencing company. I mean,
How does that work?
how
How
does
does
it
that
work?
work? Yeah, I think what that tells us is that we are all the elements all of the time. That's just a nice little gentle reminder for us all. But there will be one of the five, the water, the wood, the fire, the earth, and the metal, that we really identify with, and it informs our behavior more than any of the others. So, what that says to me is, despite your natural caution, your natural desire to be invisible and not pinned down, um, there is enough of your other elements that have that flexibility and the robustness that says, no, it's okay. I'll do this. I mean, the wood would say, yeah, I'll do this. I'll help a friend. No worries. It'll be quite a challenge. That'll be a laugh. Let's see how we get on.
Yeah.
The fire just wants to help, because fire is about the heart and friendships and um, just wanting the best, and everybody getting on and everybody doing what they need to do, and supporting that. The
Yeah.
earth will just bring cake, and make us all very comfortable indeed. But I do a disservice to earth, because it's so much more than that, as Meld and my conversations showed. And metal will be constantly evaluating the value of this experience and whether it wants to repeat it again or not. So all of those things are contextually engaging in our conversation, but the thing that really will be rippling through here is our water, because of the situation and where we place ourselves in. And whilst wood is my primary element, water is my second. So I retreat into water a lot. And I was beginning to get very nervous this morning, and I couldn't get my notes together. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is going to be hideous. And really feeling that watery adrenal rush going on.
Well, you're going to hoot because, as you know, I mentioned to you the other day, the first thing I did once I had agreed to do this with you was I thought, right, PowerPoint presentation, got to get organized. And here are my notes that I've made this morning. And I mean, I wrote them down. I wrote them down, and I
Typed
went,
them up.
I can't read my handwriting. That's no good. I'm going to have to type them up. And then have I got time to print them out before the meeting? Yes, I have. Stay calm. I want to be organized. I don't have the fear of getting it wrong and messing it up.
Yeah,
Um, but um, but
here you
that's
are.
yeah, that's what I do. But what I did do is I started to look through the information. But what I did before I read it about the water element, and I know quite a bit just through our discussions where you've mentioned things before and said, "Oh, you're so water." And I decided to just write down, how would I describe myself? What, and use some words. And then when I looked at the what is water in balance and what is water out of balance, I was like, yep, yep, yep.
I mean, it works, doesn't it? It
It really
absolutely
does.
works.
Yeah, yeah, and that, like say, it's being prepared. I'm generally always overly prepared, whether it be in my work life or my private life. I'm always thinking of, well, what could go wrong?
Yeah.
In fact, I've got to have my plan A, my plan B, and I am the one that would have a plan C. And when I read that in the notes, I was like, that really is me.
Yeah.
Um, and generally, my plan A does tend to work, but I always have to have B and C because then I operate on my worst case scenario.
Yeah.
As long as I've got what is my bottom line worst case scenario,
Yeah.
right, deal with that. That's my plan C.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's just the way. I
That
don't
is.
know necessarily why I'm like that, but if I don't have a plan, then I can be completely out of balance. And I guess I'm a Libran as well. So if my scales are out of balance and my water element is out of balance, that's probably quite a bad place for me to sit in.
It is very uncomfortable. Very
Very
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable for
And,
Shazza.
and it will prompt the rising of the fear, the internal fear that comes from feeling vulnerable.
Yeah,
And at its extreme level, the water element out of balance, we will be going into an existential fear for our very survival. I mean, it will be, it's irrational when we look at this, the context and say, look, we're thoroughly um, intelligent people, we're rational, we're grounded, we can sort this out. But there will be something in that situation that triggers this watery fear that then we go into catastrophization and suddenly we lose all power of our wits and our senses and we go into that freeze, fight, or flight.
yeah,
And that's the extreme end of water, and it's very uncomfortable. If we're there for a couple of times every now and again, great, stops
yeah,
us, getting hit by a bus in a road. But
yeah,
actually, that is deeply, deeply uncomfortable and injurious to our health.
yeah.
Very injurious. Yeah.
I think when I was younger, I think this actually was something that I didn't really understand. But when I look back at it now, I really have had that all the way through
Yeah.
my life. Um, but now I understand it as I've got older, and you just learn more. You understand your own behaviors. You've experienced other people more and their behaviors, and whether it be challenges, friendships, through all of your life experience, you grow, don't you? And you start to realize, you start to learn who you are. So I do recognize that I am that person that has to have a plan. Um, and so I kind of, but I'm okay with that now. Whereas before I would think, I'd probably go into more of a spin. But now I know that that works for me. That
Yeah.
is what I do. And I think it doesn't matter if that plan ever needs to change or it never needs to be put in action. But it's like the file, it's like, emergency file. That's the emergency file. Go to that file. There's plan A, plan B, and plan C.
Absolutely. And you bring out two beautiful points there, because what you've talked about is this life experience of knowing self, so increasing levels of self-awareness, which I think the five element model, call it what you will, it's rooted in ancient Taoist philosophy. It gives us a framework to understand life and ourselves within
Yeah,
the construct of life, reality, and it allows for us to recognize whether we are operating in our most fulfilling um, sort of breadth of what is available to us. Are we actually fulfilling our destiny, which is very much to do with the water element? But we're also accruing wisdom through those experiences, and water brings us the virtue of wisdom.
yeah,
Oh, my goodness me, which means that if we give ourselves time to reflect after an experience, I mean, we deal with it in the moment, often with adrenaline flowing. If it's a dangerous situation, our water element will be engaged very quickly, and we will deal with the challenges, the danger that we are presented with. And then afterwards, when we're safe, keyword for water, the adrenaline stops flowing. We feel
that word safe.
that's it. That's for you. For me, it's comfort as a Cancerian, but actually, it's water is safety above all else. And you will certainly, as a mother, you will go to the ends of the earth to provide a safe place for your children and those dependent upon you.
Well, you will hoot at this, but when my youngest daughter was born, I had my eldest was 2, and my youngest daughter was born just the day before my eldest daughter's second birthday. And I was living in Scotland, and I used to have to drive across the Dundee Bridge, the bridge to Dundee, if you like, across water. And I kid you not, this is the truth. The
I can feel it.
worry that, okay, so if the car goes over the bridge, how am I going to rescue the girls? How,
Oh
how
my God.
how will I get them out of the car? How will I manage it? So I actually had blow up swim band things
Yep. Yep. Rubber rings.
I, that they were in the car. They weren't on the children. The children were safely strapped into their car, you know.
That would have been a little bit too out of balance had you had them on the children.
I
Would have
did
been
have
worried then.
how in that moment, if the car did go over into the water, I would climb in and administer calmly their armbands. You know, I'm surprised I didn't actually have diving gear for them with an oxygen tank because
Yes.
I could
Gosh.
I would have. That was the level of me. That was me living in fear. It's
Yeah.
always if that happens, right? I've got an emergency plan. I've got a backup plan, or and it wasn't. It's not. It hasn't always been about things like that, but that was an extreme feeling that I had at that time when I had the two tiniest children
Yeah.
who 100% relied on me keeping them safe.
Yeah.
Uh, Obviously, I worry like if they're going out in the car, you know, drive safely, you know, be aware of the roads, be aware if it's icy, those kind of things. But
Yeah.
it's slightly different now. But you know, that was an extreme time for me, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that was when they were tiny. Um,
Yes.
it-
Gosh.
yeah, in work, I've been like that too. I've been if I've had a big meeting. I've been, oh my gosh, what if I get it wrong? What if I say the wrong word? What if I get that wrong? And I will over prepare and plan A, plan B, plan C. What if I'm even to the point, what if I'm late? What train do I get? I'll get the earliest train. I'll be there 2 hours early and I'll go and have a coffee before just to make sure. Because what if the train's late? What if I don't get there? I mean, the whole thing. But I've done it. You know,
Yes. Yes. You've perfected it. You've actually
I've
perfected the art of water.
avoided doing any of these things. I've
Yeah.
just my way of dealing with them is to be over prepared, probably.
Yeah.
And but you know that's okay because I still
It
did it.
is.
It didn't stop me doing anything in my life. So that's the main thing. I didn't become somebody
Yes.
else. I've just been that person that's like, you know, worst case scenario, right? So that's what I can do to
Yeah.
control that, to make sure that I'm it doesn't go wrong.
Yes. And that was a brilliant point because the way water functions, because we're most of us are on the cusp of just out of balance with water most of the time. Um, if we don't just get a grip of that and use watery gifts and skills and talents to bring us back into balance, it starts to run away with us. So you know this, and I do, that spiral, the downward spiral from mild nervousness into I'm actually quite frightened of this, into abject terror and then catastrophization will lead us ultimately into paralysis. We will
Yeah.
freeze. I mean, it's rare that we will run, flight, but we'd never fight at that level. It will just be freeze. And we'll notice this in extreme behaviors like OCD,
Yeah.
where we cannot leave the house without checking the lock 17 times. We'll get to the car, we'll have to go back, check the lock. And these obsessive routines that that we then have to incorporate into our life, that it takes 20 minutes to leave the house.
Mm.
That's not great. That's out of balance. We don't want to be living our life like that. But that is watery fear gone wrong. So what water does in order to keep us tethered nearer to the balance and manageable fear, which I would call vigilance, we are always vigilant of the dangers of life and we manage them, we mitigate risk, etc. We prepare like you do. But what that does is reassures us that we've taken all the steps that we can conceivably take within a realistic and appropriate level of preparedness.
Yeah.
And then we just, in a funny way, just say, right, now I just have to step out of the house. And whatever happens to me, I'll deal with it because I have that level of preparation. I have reassured myself that the risk is mitigated to the extent that it can only ever be within my control, and I will go about my business with joy, with lightness, with a desire to engage with life Because if we don't do that and we're out and we're depleted in water, it will spiral down horrifically
Yeah.
into paralysis. So we've always
So,
got to be mindful of this.
yeah, I have also done the opposite. So whilst I might be focusing on um, over preparing, if you like, in many ways, um, for something that I'm working on, I can leave the house and completely forget to lock the door. I'm like,
How
how
did
have
I
I?
do that?
Because
Yeah.
it's so opposite to my, but I can get lost in that moment.
Yes. Yes.
Gone out of the house before and left pasta boiling on the hob,
Yeah.
and been in the middle of a gym session and gone, oh my God, I've left the pasta on the boil.
Yeah.
Uh, how did I do that? And so,
Yes. Distraction. I mean, that's distractions as well, isn't it? And the more mundane the task, leaving the house, putting the pasta on, the more likely we are to lose our concentration and focus on it. So actually, what we want to do is come back into the present moment and be very attentive to anything that we are doing in the present moment before we leave that and move on to the next present moment and then the next. Um, I remember as an air traffic controller, oh my goodness me, I moved up to area radar, which was near Heathrow, and as a military controller, I was sat next to my civilian counterparts. And one of my responsibilities was to take military jets and fly them across the civil airspace, the corridors in the sky. And in doing so, avoid hitting anything en route, which, everyone was very grateful for that we did that well, because you don't want to be taking a little fast jet, Harrier, and hitting a Boeing 757. And so I mean, this is why I joined air traffic control, because it was an adrenal rush, and I was very watery in my youth, really reckless at times, reckless skier, double black diamond moguls at night. Who gives a shit? Go for it, and don't put your brakes on. Just see if you get to the bottom. I mean, I lived recklessly. I recognise that now, and air traffic was all part of that. Luckily, I wasn't a reckless air trafficker, but the adrenal rush was beyond compare. So I'm sitting there and I've got my Harrier is on the runway at RAF Wittering, RAF Cottesmore, waiting to get airborne. And what you're meant to do then as an air traffic controller in the area world is then negotiate your path across this very busy bit of airspace running up the middle of England. And what you do is you check for the levels of aircraft that are flying through that area. One at 35,000 feet, one at 37,000 feet, he's going at 23,000. And you pick a level that's not occupied, or if it is occupied, the other aircraft that's at that same level is suitably far away that you're not going to get in the way of it. And
responsibility.
so you're sitting there and you've got your level and you've done your prep. And bearing in mind it's all in live time, so you've only got maybe 20 seconds before the whole air picture has changed again, and you've got to start again. So I'm going, okay. So it's 29,000 feet. Okay, I've got it. And then the aircraft says I'm delayed. Like, oh, I've got to start again. I've got to start. So I've got plan A, 29,000 feet. If he doesn't get airborne in 5 seconds, it'll be 31,000 feet. If he doesn't get airborne in 10 seconds, it's going to have to be 33,000 feet. And I'm going to have to move in that way and then that way to get in front of that 747 and behind the 747. And before the aircraft was even airborne, I had melted in absolute high state of fear and overwhelm. And I couldn't hold that many plans in my head, let alone my hands. And the guy that was training me leant over, Martin, and he said, stop right now. He said, all you can do is react in the moment. Have a good awareness of the overall air picture, but respond in the moment and be confident and bold. And that was the only reason I managed to get through 2 years. But it was exhausting. And there are certain things that water has to accept. That certain things, there's almost a divine destiny about it. I don't mean that in a religious way or a spiritual way. It just is, there is a flow of life that if you are aligned with it, you will have a fairly easy passage through. If you're constantly resisting it, coming up against it, not aligned with it, it's almost like there's a synthetic intervention. It's not a natural intervention or a natural alignment, and it will be a really, really challenging, difficult life full of resistance and fear. So we really want to be in the flow. So reassuring ourselves that we've taken the best, we've made the best preparation that we can, and then at that point we just have to commit and go with the flow. And then know that through our life experience, we have accrued sufficient wisdom to be able to respond appropriately to any change in circumstances, whether we haven't planned for them or not. We just trust ourselves that we've got this. We'll manage, and
And you
that's
know,
all water.
it is, and I was sort of thinking back as well, and it's I thought back and I thought, yeah, I've always actually been quite a driven person. I don't know whether you would agree with that or not, uh,
Yes,
whether that's water flowing forward. So
it is. It's the will of life. It's ambition. It is absolutely that. Yeah.
when I look back to to my childhood, I firmly believed when I was about 10, 12 years old that I was going to be a Wimbledon champ. And that
Oh,
was what I was going to do. I was winning little school tennis competitions, and I'm going to be, that's what I'm going to be. And then when I watched Steffi Graf and Boris Becker win at 15 and 17 years of age, I think they did. I,
yes.
but I was very good at adapting because in my mind I went, okay, that's not going to happen for me. I realize that now. Get in the real world. And I was only a teen in my mid-teens. And I was like, okay, so what's next? And I just go, boom, and I move on. So I don't dwell on it. I go, yep, that's not that plan hasn't worked. Off we go to a next one. And I just keep making new ones. If so, I do, nothing holds me back
Yep.
from progressing. I'm always wanting to progress. And as you know, I've changed my job in the last year.
Yeah.
Uh, um, and the sort of last 6 months of last year, it was incredibly busy for me as I sort of adjusted and made some changes in my new role and set things up how I want them to be managed on a day-to-day basis, etc. And now I'm sitting here going, right, what am I going to do this year? Right,
Yeah.
what
What's your challenge? Yeah. 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 That's wood and water.
am I do?
Yes.
But I'm not bored. I've got a
Yeah.
list of things that I need to do, and I'm just working out what they need to do because they're not at the moment that obvious to me. They're sort of
Yep. Well,
and
that's really good because watery is elusive. Just think of the natural flow of water. I mean, it's frozen behind me in the photograph, and rightly so, but it's always moving under the surface. There's always movement in water. A water person will never sit still. There'll always be something tapping you. A fidget.
my parents used to say you're a fidget bottom. I
Fidget
was
bottom. That's it.
always moving.
Yep, have to move. So the worst thing water can do is stagnate, get stuck, get
Yeah,
enclosed, which is why they don't like being pinned down to something like, you have to be there doing that within that very enclosed way. They go, oh dear, that makes me feel heebie-jeebies. So
actually, you use that
yeah,
word as well, pinned down. So
yeah,
I'm really protective. So some of the other words I wrote about myself is I'm very protective of my time.
yeah,
I have I have struggled over the years to enforce boundaries where I have given up. So I don't like to be pinned down. Sorry, that was my
yeah,
point.
yeah.
If somebody asks me to do something for them, I'll be like, oh, oh, just get on with it yourself. What are you asking me for? And I don't say that, but that's what my inner dialogue is saying. And I'm thinking, oh, don't want to. But so if I do offer my help to somebody or I give my time to somebody, it really is genuine,
Yeah,
uh, and it really is meant. But if
yes. And you'll
somebody
commit to it and you'll put it in the plan and
or if
you'll preserve it. Yes.
somebody asks me, it is very much I will absolutely think to myself, yes, absolutely, no problem. But if I can quite quickly categorize it and go, they don't really need me to give them my time for that. That
Yeah.
is not a need. It is not that important. They just want it. And then I'm like, I have to really, really think about it because I've found myself in situations before where I have run around after so many people and then felt exhausted and thought, well, I haven't left any time for myself.
Yeah.
That was much more in my younger years. Oh no, it has happened in recent years as well, but I've recognized it much quicker
Yeah.
and tried to sort of. claw it back in.
Yeah. Can I mention that? Because that's a brilliant point on water, preserving resources. Water is equates to the winter season. We look at all the elements through their natural correspondences. It's just the easiest way to do it. So we first look at the season that corresponds to the element, and in water, it's winter.
Right.
Because it just encapsulates this sort of, there's movement in the depth, but it can be incredibly still on the surface. It seems like nothing is happening, but by God, the will of life is constantly being nurtured and supported in the depth, so that when we're ready for spring, which is the wood element, we can burst into life. But we've got to have this period of relative superficial stillness in water that allows us to do this deep reflection, looking back on our experiences of the seasons before, accruing the wisdom that allows us to go forward into the new year, making the right decisions and the right plans, which is wood, because water wisdom has to inform that. And the only way, I mean, I went out for a walk we had four cold snap days in this part of the country. And there were times when I was thinking, ooh, this is quite brutal. I wasn't far from home. It was only 4 miles in the car. I could have walked if the car hadn't started. I was doing all of this. What if the battery goes flat? Oh my God, what if I slip on the ice? Geez, have I got my mobile phone? Is it fully charged? I did all of those watery things before every dog walk. And there was a sense of real vulnerability in terms of the brutal natural world, unforgiving nature of winter. And one of the reassurances we give ourselves is that we've got the resources to get through. Now, in ancient times, you would think all you actually needed was food and shelter, food, water, and shelter. You had to be sheltered from the extreme environment challenges. You had to be able to feed yourself and water yourself through the season and emerge in the spring like the animals do. Always a bit tricky for the squirrels when we get a thaw, or the hibernating critters, because we get a thaw mid-winter. They have to come out, find food that is in frozen ground, expend energy while they do that, and that will absolutely jeopardize their ability to get through the rest of the winter if we go back into a cold snap again.
Yeah.
So, get rid of that. Sorry.
Okay.
Device start. So we have to be careful with our resources, and water can be, if it's out of balance, can be quite squandering but most of us will remember, recognize the depths of winter is our Christmas in the Northern Hemisphere. And mostly that is about, and New Year is about partying and excessive behavior, where we are literally using up all our energy at a time where we should be really in the equivalent of hibernation, getting up with the crow, going to sleep with the crow, short days, long nights, preserving resources, because otherwise we make ourselves quite vulnerable. So burning the candle at both ends in our youth, when we were career minded, ambitious, or whatever, is not a good thing, because we'll exhaust our adrenals, and then we'll have adrenal fatigue in our later years, just to add to all the other miseries of aging. So what you said was right. I can't remember what your equivalent was, but it was about, we have to husband our resources.
Protecting my time. If
Yes,
somebody
and yes, not exhausting yourself. Yes, through unnecessary activity.
And what you used as well, is the word I've got written down, and I've just written it down on my notes here again because I wanted to just remember that you just brought it up, was you were talking about winter and the weather can be brutal.
Yeah.
And it is one of the words that I described myself as, can be brutal.
Wow. Wow. Well, I'm going to put that in a slightly more, should we say, sympathetic look. I'm going to see you as a really big, deep, wide river, fast flowing river that is going to always find its way to the lowest level or to the sea, if that's the case. Nothing stops water in flow. Nothing, Sharon. And that's why I liked what you said about your flexibility. You don't dwell on it. You weren't going to become a Wimbledon champion and rub shoulders with Steffi, God love her, and Boris. Yeah. So you just sort of changed course, very watery thing. Because water, if it comes up against resistance, it can do one of two things: change course and go around the rock, or it will become really quite stubborn and say, no, I'm going to wear you down. I will keep going in this way until I have eroded a path through. We see that over eons of time. We see where water has eroded the stone. So
Yeah.
I'm going to put that as less than brutal and more determined, because determined is what water is. If there's a determination to fulfill its destiny,
Yeah.
whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I quite like that. And I think again, when I'm thinking about that description, the other way I described myself was is I do lack empathy. I can give it. It's definitely there. I think that might come from the earth part.
Yeah.
It's there, but I'm impatient with it.
Yes.
So for example, um, if a friend is talking about something that they need help with, I'm really happy to chat through, and I'll chat through, and then that's nice, no problem, lovely. They go off and do their day, and I go and do my day, and then it comes back round again. And then if I feel I've got value to add, I will obviously, with a friend, share my opinion. Or I often say, would you like my advice or what I think? I'll ask mostly because it's not always wanted, is it? Sometimes people
Yeah.
just want to listen, and I can just listen. I might do lots of eye rolling in quietly on the other end of the phone when that's happening. But with anybody, family, friends, whatever, even my husband sometimes. Oh, but just to
Yeah.
listen to something. But so I'm okay with that. But if they do say yes, they would like my advice, and then I say, well, I think this. When I get to that point, it could come out very brutal. So I would normally have a filter, but then once I get the opportunity, it can just be taken away, and it just comes out as very,
Full
very
flood, full flood of advice.
bad advice. Um,
Yes.
and
Rather than a trickle.
Yeah, and another example that I thought of, and I hadn't thought of for ages, but I never forget it, and it's just Nick and I were at we were visiting it. We'd had a business meeting. We'd been invited to a business meeting, and there was an evening meal, and we were put up in this lovely hotel. And we arrived the day before, and they said, go out for dinner. It was a beautiful summer's evening. We went and sat in a pub garden, just the two of us. It was gorgeous location. I won't give any detail, but it was really, really lovely. And it was one of those picnic benches, where you have seats, bench on both sides.
Yeah.
And we were just on the end, and three people came up and said, oh, would you mind if we sat on the end here? We're like, of course not, sit down. Gorgeous, isn't it? And then sort of went back to our private conversations. Then they started to engage with us on chit chat, which fills me with horror because I don't want to make new friends. And then not interested in making new friends or meeting new people ever. I'm quite happy with my tribe, unless it's through a professional basis that needs to happen through work or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, they started to ask, there was a political event going on at that time, and they asked my opinion. And I said, oh, I never discuss my views on politics with family or friends or with people I don't know. I just sort of, got rid of it. And they were like, no, 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 we really want you to ask your opinion. They were quite young. They were in their mid-20s, mid to late 20s. And I said, absolutely not a chance. There's no need. We're having a really nice time here. We're just, please just leave us, and they pressed on it. And I
Oh, no.
where the brutality came out. So I said, okay, I have now said to you 3 times that I don't want to have this discussion with you. And now if you really want to hear my view, then you have to be prepared you might not like it. How do you feel about that? Oh, yes, fine, fine. We just really want to hear. So I just went, and then the girl got up, ran off, and said, well, I can't listen to this. And I said, the two guys were left behind, and I sat there and I said to the guy who was humpy, and then his friend, he said to me, he does this all the time. And I said, but you forced me, you're my witness, you forced me, you pushed and pushed and pushed me.
Yeah.
And I did warn you that it's going to come full barrels, that
Yeah.
if whether you like it or not, I had no idea whether you would like my view or not, but you pushed
Yeah.
me to, and then you've gone in a hump because you don't like my view. And I said,
Shocking.
that's enough. But that is the thing, is I could have walked away, but I
Yeah.
was right. And it just came flying out.
What an extraordinary experience. What
Yeah.
an extraordinary experience. Yeah. So they thought that they could, well, they thought they could contain you, or certainly um, contain the floodwaters, but clearly they hadn't quite accrued enough wisdom and experience to be able to channel your energy in a way that they could either feel comfortable with it or be comfortable with walking away from. I find that an extraordinary experience. Never happened to me. You
Well,
were, I think you're kind to give them two chances to remove themselves. But
I
hey,
still don't know why I actually did it to this day, but
strange.
actually, I think it was because when somebody is like
Yeah.
that, eventually, I don't like confrontation. I
Mm.
don't, I'm very happy to keep my views on things within my little circle
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
um,
But they
that's,
pushed.
yeah, they pushed and pushed and pushed, and
Gosh. And
uh,
you opened the floodgate. We were at Cane Locks and we opened all the lock gates, all 21 of them, didn't we? At that point. And they knew about that.
hope that doesn't happen because there is the potential there right then. I would be
Yeah. 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 Gosh,
um
that's interesting. Well,
and
well done.
yeah, the
Wow.
only thing I did manage to do is I managed to keep my manner calm. I don't know
Yeah,
how
good.
I managed to not use any foul language. I was just
Yeah.
very direct, but to them it felt brutal.
Oh gosh, yes. Yes, yes. Yeah. Well, water um will wash away any detritus. Let's be honest, it will carry with it anything that isn't properly pegged down. So they haven't pegged themselves down well enough. But maybe they'll hopefully young things, perhaps a little naive, a little idealistic, will perhaps learn something from that experience and accrue a little wisdom themselves. How inappropriate it is to go up to a perfect stranger and interrupt their lovely meal, and insist on an inauthentic response in terms of I don't talk to complete strangers. Anyway,
Looking
bloody
back,
hell, that was odd.
looking back at it, I think they were just they probably were looking for a little bit of controversial conversation, or I don't really know.
I don't. Who knows? Who knows? But hey, they got water. They got a full flood, and they'll learn from that, Sharon. They'll learn from that. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Well, what a wonderful wealth. I'm just looking at my notes to see if there's anything that we should cover. Um, that terms of how do we resource ourselves. So you spoke very beautifully about the planning, the consideration, the contingencies, um, the blow up armbands for crossing the bridge to Dundee. God, and I must share with you, when I lived alone, which has been most of my life, and I've always had dogs, my biggest fear was something would happen to me at work on the way home from work. I had a lengthy commute, and the dogs would be left at home and they'd starve and die horribly for on their own because nobody would know I wasn't there. So I couldn't leave enough notes in various pockets, my purse, my wallet stuck all over the house. In the event of an emergency where I am incapacitated or dead, please rescue my dogs. This is where they are. Phone these people. And I almost got to the point of paralysis of not being able to leave them at all. Um, so I understand that level of responsibility and what it drives you to do to mitigate risk
Yeah.
of our loved ones dying horribly.
Yeah.
And then at one stage, I just had to go enough now because I was obsessing about it and I couldn't cover all of the potentials of what would happen if I didn't come home. I just couldn't cover it all. I didn't have enough people. And at some stage, I had to draw a line and say, we're just going to have to trust in something greater than myself here to look after them.
Yeah. And giving that
Giving
trust
that. Yeah.
to the
I've done
universe.
exactly. I've done what I can, and now
Yeah.
I'm going to have to step out of this and hand it over to something bigger and
But as
better
much
than destiny.
as I possibly can.
Yeah, yeah. And there was one other thing about resourcing ourselves. When do we take time to rest, properly rest, and sleeping? By the way, bad luck, everybody. Your good night's sleep is not enough. That does sleep, but it's not restoration, rejuvenation, replenishment of scant and exhausted resources. And in the East, they do it so much better because they have a daily practice of meditation, of Qigong or Tai Chi, walking mindfully in nature. So these things are incredibly important as our lives get busier and busier. It's going to get very frenetic. For any astrologers out there, Uranus is going to move into Gemini, which is effectively a mental breakdown, in as much as so much information is going to come at us, we won't be able to process it quickly enough. Uranus wants to, shake things up, and it's innovative and creative and all the rest of it. And Gemini is the mind. And if we're not rooted and grounded, we'll get very scattered and we'll be frazzled all of the time. So water is always encouraging us, like the picture behind me, be still. Find moments of stillness, mindful stillness in your day.
I do. I've always actually, and that was some of the other notes I wrote down. Is I'm always wanting to be on the go, progressing, going forward.
Finding your way to the sea, regardless of the obstacle.
Finding my way to the sea.
Yeah.
And bizarrely, actually, all pictures that I choose generally have water in them, which is
not bizarrely, beautiful, aligned.
finding my way to the sea, but I often crave that stillness.
Yeah.
And when I have the stillness, I go, oh, I'm bored now.
Yes, there's a resistance to it because it's not movement.
Yeah, I'm not very good at being in the stillness. So
yes,
I can do it, and I can do it for a short while. Maybe I can have a day of stillness or an afternoon, but 2 days I'm like, really bored. And I don't mean that I have to always be on some mega project or anything like that. I'm talking about physically still as well.
Yeah.
Just, yes, I do like to lay on the sofa and indulge in a box set of Netflix and have a glass of wine and just completely relax with a log fire on and the dog and just family and gorgeous. But I couldn't do that very easily on my own on repeat.
No.
I would be like, right, once I've done walk the dog, or I've been to the gym, or I've done something active, I've always been like that since a child.
Yeah.
I was a child that ever laid in bed. And used to annoy my parents when I was younger because I'd be on the driveway at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning hitting a tennis ball against the side of the house because obviously I'm going to be graph.
Yeah.
Climbing trees, I was always active, so it's always been part of my life. But so I've always found it difficult to do the sitting still, and I do enjoy it, but I can't do it for very long.
Yeah.
And then if I do it for too long, then I go into the complete opposite of can't be bothered. Oh, I've got to complete that simple task, and I can't. I can't. I think I've really got to get myself together and do that.
Yes.
So
I think the key for us all is to notice the difference between deep-rooted tiredness and lethargy that comes from lack of motivation because we've lost that sense of joyfulness or that engagement with life, because that's some of us would call that slipping into a depression. Not saying for you, but there is a difference between when you stop and your body goes, and for water, the adrenaline stops flowing, only then will you realize how very tired you are to your core. The habit is then to just pick ourselves up, coffee, slight sort of boost, or a 5 minute, 40-minute combat kip, and then we're off again, because that's the habit of water. Keep pushing, moving. And it's just useful to become aware of levels of inner tiredness that have accrued over decades of busy, pushing. I must and I will get to the sea.
Yeah.
So it's just being mindful, and certainly, as I shared with you, when you can notice when water is in and out of balance, quick and timely corrections when we're just out of balance are much better than fundamental, please put me back together again because I am now suffering adrenal fatigue, I'm having a breakdown, and I cannot move.
Yeah.
So we always want to nip it in the bud by being very aware, vigilant, but not hyper-vigilant for water, because water can slip into hyper-vigilance, and then that gets into a fear-based spiral. But just mindful of, our needs and being okay to address them without the judgment of I'm being lazy or I'm being unproductive. For water, the key thing is I'm unproductive, I'm guilty, I'm just, I've managed to perfect the art of taking hours off and sitting in front of the telly watching snooker or something mindless on Netflix. My boyfriend, my husband has got us into Aussie Gold Hunters on Discovery Plus, which is the most mindless thing.
I,
Prospecting for gold.
yeah.
But it's perfect because I completely and utterly switch off. Because I, like you, am a doer, busy, 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 plan, whatever. So it's imperative that we find those moments, whatever they look like.
It's just, you're, yeah, there's nothing, you don't come away feeling emotionally involved in what you've just.
Exactly, because that would be counterproductive. That
Yeah.
would just add to my tiredness because I'm emotionally involved with all of my patients, my clients, my this, my that. Yeah, it's mindless, mind-numbing, glorious nothingness. But you know what it is about? Water. Strangely, because it's in the Australian outback, so there is no bloody water. They have to drive it in from hundreds of kilometers. But it's about determination, willpower, ambition. Aussie gold hunters are driven in such a watery way. And I wanted to say about you aligning with Steffi and Boris, the best example of a water elemental energy that we know in our current times, Andy Murray. Strange it's tennis. But Novak Djokovic would be the same, only Novak's got more fire. Andy Murray is pure water.
Is
Water
he?
within, water within, water within that, and then water within that. And I dare say he hasn't got much of anything else. And his voice is a groan, it's a monotone. You could almost sort of just drop off. It doesn't vary. It's a relentless drive to the sea. That's water. That's
Well,
him.
I did notice that in the voice, and I thought that's interesting. I thought, can I
Yeah.
relate to that? But I often, when I'm when I'm in my gym, actually, I will go, oh, and I would just like really sort of just grumble. I'll be like, if I'm on the treadmill and I'm thinking about something, and I'll just go, and I'll just talk to myself, oh, for goodness sake. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I will growl a bit actually. Uh,
Mm.
um, but um, but sometimes my voice goes on and goes
Yes.
high and hyper as well when
Yep.
I'm in
Yeah.
a state. It go,
Well, you think about you are a mountain stream, coming down the mountain, trickly small, shallow, and then you build up speed, and then you go into that slow Mississippi, sort of very, very slow, sort of winding path. You can be all of those things within 3 seconds,
yeah, yeah,
depending on how you're feeling, the construct, the context, the environment.
yeah.
But the one thing about water is you cannot bloody hold it in your hand. It is so slippery and elusive. So, these are wonderful, wonderful insights, Sharon. Thank you so much. Don't pin me down. Water will. The other thing about water elemental energy, you can always tell somebody in a room if they're strong on the water element. They will never sit with their back to the door. They will always be facing the door because they will want to know where the exits are and how to get out in a fire.
Absolutely 100% me. I always, when I look at the seats, I think I always go, I'm sitting there.
I will sit on the end. I
I
can't
want,
bear to be in the middle. I'm always on the end of a row.
are you?
Yeah, I can't bear to be pinned. I can't bear to be hemmed in because I won't be able to get out quickly enough.
Yeah.
Always on the outside.
When we go on holiday, well, I not anymore because it's just my husband and I on holiday now. But when we used to go with the girls, I always had a plan.
Yeah. How to get
Always,
out.
always had a plan.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
aware your surroundings, always had a plan. Not
Yeah.
that it would never have worked, but there was a plan, right?
But it
So
meant that you could actually get on board the aircraft and sit and mostly enjoy the flight until you got off the other end,
yeah,
rather than being sat there frozen in fear of, oh
yeah.
my God, what if the wing falls off? What if? That's no way to live a life.
Yeah.
Oh, Sharon, thank you so much. What a lovely, very positive and upbeat sharing about water, because it can get a bit uncomfortable in water, especially if it's in the catastrophization stage and the fearful stage.
I have
Um,
those places, it
yeah,
has,
I have.
I have been in those.
Unpleasant.
Yeah, and it's I know what that feeling stagnant is like, and it really is like the stinking pond
Yeah. Yes.
with the not so
Horrible.
favorable pond life living in it. And
Yes.
um,
Decaying. It's not fulfilling your destiny when you're stuck in a stagnant pond, love. It's not. There will be this primal drive to break out and break free and start to continue your journey to the sea. You're like a salmon, or you cannot not do it. I mean, when they look at, you look at the salmon going vertical up waterfalls, that
yeah,
is primal water drive, the drive for the will of life.
I look back and
Love it.
I have achieved the things I wanted to achieve. There's more that I want to do still, but
Yeah,
actually, when I think how, how have I got through things and what have I done? And I'm actually, yeah, I'm happy
yeah.
with constantly just
Progress, progress.
trying to always be like, that's okay, we can do that, we can keep going, we can just keep
Yeah,
going,
yeah,
going. I say it to actually friends and the girls all the time. Just keep going.
yeah. Just
Just
keep going, just keep moving, and just allow for the fact that they may not have as much water, or their water might not be quite as high in their hierarchy as it is for you, and their priorities will be different, because that can be a bit frustrating with the water drive to be around a metal that wants to sit and go internal and go and just assess the value and water. No, we haven't got time for that. Push, 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 move, move, move. And they go, oh no, I have to weigh it up here. And you go, oh, for God's sake.
That's probably what I should do, is I should work out what the girls are, and I haven't yet, so I need to think
Yes.
about that. And
Yes.
there's a whole
Well,
question in itself. So
yes, it is off camera.
exactly.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, dearest friend Sharon, for your time, for your energy, for being pinned down for an hour and a bit with me on water. I hope everybody watching this has found this really useful. There'll be details on the blurb as to, if you want to know more about five elements, please do reach out to me. I run little online workshops and all sorts of things. So um, it's great fun for me to play with the elements as we do. So thank you, my darling. Wishing you a very productive, moving forward sort of day. Because if it isn't, you're not happy, and I want you to be happy. And please promise me you'll take 5 minutes of stillness, just for
I will.
yourself
I
at some
will.
stage.
I will.
All right, darling. Much love to you. God bless for now. Bye.
Bye bye.
Lovely.